This is something that makes me very mad. This pisses me off. All right, so we're gonna get into this a little bit here. So Donald Trump posted the Truth Social, 8:04 a.m., February 21st, which would have been Friday. Elon is doing a great job, but I would like to see him get more aggressive. Remember, we have a country to save, but ultimately to make greater than ever before. MAGA. Yeah. So Elon, apparently following his lead, gets the idea. The afternoon after that, yesterday afternoon, consistent with President Donald Trump's instructions, all federal employees will shortly receive an email requesting to understand what they got done last week. Failure to respond will be taken as a resignation. So he puts out a tweet saying, you're all receiving an email to let us know what work you got done. All federal employees at every level requesting to understand what they got done last week. Failure to respond will be taken as a resignation. Doge's Elon Musk says federal employees must document their work or resign. Federal workers received an email on Saturday instructing them to document 5 things they accomplished in the past week. And Elon said those who don't reply would risk losing their jobs. The email from the Office of Personnel Management, or OPM, had the subject line, "What did you do last week?" It instructed recipients to reply with 5 examples of what they got done last week, excluding any classified information, and asked workers to include their supervisor in their response. Musk, who is overseeing the White House's Department of Government Efficiency, or DOGE, said in a post on X that failure to respond will be taken as a resignation. He said the directive was consistent with President Trump's instructions. The email itself did not include the threat of forced resignation. The deadline to reply is Monday at midnight, according to the email. However, at least 3 agencies told workers to ignore the request and not to reply, raising doubts about the enforceability of Musk's threat. Federal workers outside of OPM do not report to the agency, and it cannot dismiss employees directly. In a follow-up post, Musk wrote that the bar is very low here. An email with some bullet points that make any sense at all is acceptable. Should take less than 5 minutes to write. Hey, you know what would take less than 5 minutes? For you to go fuck yourself. That would take less than 5 minutes. In fact, knowing you would probably take less than 1 minute, you fucking freak. That's what I would write back to him. Go fuck yourself. I would not respond to this at all. Of course it's unenforceable.
Well, as someone who wants to help to repopulate the Earth, my short time to orgasm has been extremely efficient.
It's been extremely efficient. It's been extremely valuable. It's part of what makes me as superior as I am. This is the fucking tech bro mindset. This is exactly how these people think. And I've known this for a long time. That's why I realized how dangerous these fucking people were and how sick and psychotic they were. This is just like, getting a, censorship notification from YouTube or from Facebook or from X now, and you have no real recourse, no real way of figuring out what the hell they think or why they did what they did, no real appeals process. Or if you're an Uber driver or a DoorDash or a Grubhub driver and your account gets deactivated and you lose access to all of your income in a split second with no appeals process, they have such contempt for people that Elon Musk will decide on a whim, you know what, let's just terrorize the entire federal workforce by sending them an email saying, what are 5 things you accomplished last week? They're doing their fucking jobs. Look at what they were hired to do. That's what they have to. What do you mean? Well, name 5 things you accomplished last week. If you're a cashier at a supermarket, what are 5 things you accomplished last week? Well, I don't know. I can only name 1. I rang the fucking customers up, right? and bagged the groceries. So that's 2. I can't get to 5. Not everybody has 5. And of course it's unenforceable, but they have such disrespect for people that they think absolutely nothing of just, hey, you know what? I feel like flexing my muscle a little bit. So we're going to send an email. Hey, report back with 5 things you did last week. If you don't respond, we will consider that a resignation. That's the level of disrespect they have for you. That's how much these fucking people despise you. And if you think, well, who cares? It's only the federal workforce. This is how these tech motherfuckers treat their employees in the private workforce. This is how they treat people. This is exactly how they treat people, and it's how they think all bosses should treat all workers. And that's what's in store for you, especially when these people start automating jobs out of existence and just notifying you via email that you're not needed anymore anyway, at all.
Yeah. If you remember, Bernie Sanders went on Fox years ago and had the whole Fox audience cheering for everything he was saying, for Medicare for all, for free college, attacking billionaires, attacking wealth. Whole audience was cheering for this. Sanders, whatever we might think of him, and we don't think much of him, but it's an instructive example of properly directed rage of the working class and the middle class, and how easy it was to direct that rage in what we would obviously consider the appropriate direction. The Democratic Party just shut down that entire political project. That inchoate rage had to go somewhere. And these billionaires, with their control over their own media, which, people think they've been liberated. They haven't been liberated. They've been led into a different pen with different propaganda on behalf of a different set of ghouls. But
Right.
you still have this very controlled propagandistic media. I don't know if I would go so far as to say worse than what it replaced, but I will say there's not even a notion of a hint of a ghost of a suggestion that there should be any accountability or fact checking or proof. Yeah, no, we'll let people do community notes. Yeah,
Right.
we'll just we'll just crowdsource the fact checking. Um, so in that sense, maybe it's worse. It's still too new to really evaluate what all of the consequences of that are going to be. But okay, so people have this rage, and essentially the system did not allow them to direct it at the billionaires. Even now, you have Hakeem Jeffries kissing up to the billionaires. You have the new DNC chair talking about how great the billionaires are. There is no actor in the entire system, the established system, that is willing to direct your rage, really fundamentally, at the privileges of someone like Elon Musk. The opposition party, the so-called, will not do it. This opened up a tremendous opportunity for them to get workers to direct their rage at other workers.
Exactly.
And I know a lot of our communist friends are not going to like this comparison. But in totalitarian societies such as you did have in the old Soviet Union, that was an old trick to deflect responsibility from the government. Ivan got 2 coupons. See, he's very crafty. He got away with something. That's why you had no bread last week. This is what they're doing to the population. They're convincing them that the problem is that some poor schmuck who works in a federal agency can't produce 5 bullet points.
Yeah, I mean, that's all true. They shouldn't have to produce anything. They were hired to do a job. What they accomplish on a routine basis is in the description of the job. What if you worked at a hospital? What if you were a nurse and you got an email from the president of the hospital? It said, "I want everyone who works at this hospital, name 5 things you did last week. You have 48 hours, and if you don't, we're going to take that as a resignation." I mean, the condescension, the disrespect of that, and the cavalierness with which he'll just fire that off, even if it is
Right.
unenforceable, and it is, and everybody knows it. So OPM said in a statement that individual agencies will take any next steps. As part of the Trump administration's commitment to an efficient and accountable federal workforce, OPM is asking employees to provide a brief summary of what they did last week by the end of Monday, CCing their manager. Agencies will determine any next steps, an OPM spokesperson told CBS News. Newly sworn in FBI Director Kash Patel told his employees in an email Saturday that they should pause any responses to the OPM memo. FBI personnel may have received an email from OPM requesting information, Patel wrote in a message obtained by CBS News. The FBI, through the office of the director, is in charge of all of our review processes and will conduct reviews in accordance with FBI procedures. When and if further information is required, we will coordinate the responses. For now, please pause any responses. The State Department also directed employees to disregard the email, with an official telling employees that the department will reply on behalf of employees. No employee is obligated to report their activities outside of their department chain of command, a department official wrote in a message to workers. The Pentagon sent a similar message to employees on Sunday and posted it on X. So we don't have to read that whole thing. There is, of course, a risk of somebody revealing some sort of classified information if they just send a detailed list of like what they're doing. But even at the rank and file level, like this applies to all federal
coup
employees.
in Venezuela
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
pending.
Yeah, right, exactly. Like you could get that. But even at the more rank and file, I mean, the condescension of it, the contempt that these people have for workers, and to see workers just revel in it, to see them revel in it,
Yeah,
to see them look sideways and think, hey, yeah, what are you doing? What are you accomplishing? Should you be working? Maybe your job should be X. And everybody who thinks that this applies only to the government, like I said, this is a reflection of how these people treat their own workers. And it's how
right.
they want every boss to treat every worker everywhere.
Sure.
100%. This is their whole ethos.
Sure. And if you have been convinced that this is a victory for you, you, my friend, have probably been reading too much of popular right-wing author A. Judd.
Right.
And you have developed a syndrome we refer to as the peasant mind. I want you to tell me, explain it to me like a 5-year-old. What has any of this done for you? Do you have $1 more in your pocket than you did 2 months ago? Now, we'll very often hear, I don't care if it's $1,000. My money shouldn't go to waste. Really? Really? Okay. Well, so how do you feel about them dismantling the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, which returned $22 billion to consumers? You should, I mean, if you care about 1,000, you should really care about that, right? The 22 billion. Do you understand? Do you understand the way they're manipulating you so that you put your attention on these trivial flexes and these attempts basically to pare down the workforce in order to bring the bond market under control? That's what this is really all about in the short term. They're trying to get down interest rates by getting down bond rates. All of
Yeah.
these people are collateral damage to a project that most people who subscribe to MAGA don't even fucking understand.
Yeah, and you mentioned the CFPB. I forget what the exact number is in terms of their operating budget, but it's far less than the 22 billion that they returned to consumers. So what that means is that the CFPB actually saves the country money overall, because spending, see, this is
Right.
one more brainwashing technique, is they convince you that government spending is the only spending that matters. Well, no,
Right.
people spending money, that's still spending. Just because it's not government spending, if it's money that, at least if you have a class perspective, right? Money that the people have to spend on bullshit like overdraft fees or
Right.
predatory interest
Right.
rates or things like
Right.
that, things that the CFPB protects against. Well, that's money down the drain. Now, it's not money down the drain going to the government. It's money down the drain going to the banks, right? So if you have an analysis of that, then you have to say on a whole, the CFPB actually saved the people a lot of money.
Right.
But they won't
Right.
put it that way. They'll never put it that way.
Same exact people who will not defend and will actually, without even having the slightest understanding of the agency or what it theoretically does, but in reality did, will defend that action. Yeah, well, they did a lot of bad things. Which ones? You don't fucking know. You don't
Right.
know. You can't name anything. Elon doesn't like it. Daddy doesn't like it. Daddy's
Right.
going to give you a spanking. Not the good kind. Not the kind you like. Right? He's going to give you the bad spanking if you don't go along with everything that he says. But you're crowing about, I don't care if it's $1,000. Well, why don't you care about 22 billion? A proper working class energized, as we saw the beginnings of in those Sanders campaigns, whatever failings of the man himself and the movement in the end. People were directing this rage at tax avoidance schemes that people like Elon practice. We did a segment on that. Elon Musk paid no fucking taxes at all in 2018. The other years around the 2020s paid like 60,000, 65,000. Now, if you were going to come back and say, well, that's the system, or he pays it another way, or that's misleading, you are a fucking peasant. You are a
Yes.
fucking peasant. You don't understand how they've directed you only to attack the government, not for the right reasons, not for the reasons that you might care about. The reason they want to dismantle the government is the government was the only actor in society with enough size and power to possibly check them, as
Right.
they did in a tiny way with the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. If you add up all the money they return to consumers, which is a lot if you're a consumer
Of course.
without riches, 22 billion. Musk could write that check tomorrow and not miss it. That is how fucking greedy these people are. Just the fact that there was some agency in government that put any constraint on them being able to do anything that they wanted to do was a mote in their eye that they just absolutely could not fucking tolerate. These are
Well,
the people that you're talking about. This is why I don't have a lot of patience for people who are like, why don't you work with MAGA? You know, some of what they're doing is good. Hey, man, when they do something good, like Ukraine, we did a positive segment. But if you're looking at this overall project and ignoring all of the very clear signals they're giving of what the overall project actually is, like illegally firing two members of the NLRB so that it can't function, or shutting down the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, when people show you who they are, believe them. If they did not have an agenda to basically dismantle the government primarily for the purpose of taking away any last restraint there is on their class, why would they go after that? If this was for you, why would they go after some of the few agencies in government that still exist to help average people? Why would they go right for that? And why would you trust these people who have wanted to get rid of Social Security for almost 100 years when they tell you they only want to poke around in there because there's this massive fraud?
right. Well, yes. I mean, I agree with all of that, obviously. And specifically, though, regarding the CFPB, there's another reason that's more specific that I think is a lot of why they want to neutralize it, which is, don't forget, Elon has a vision for X as the everything app. Whitney
Right.
Webb talks about, the PayPal mafia. They want to really individualize and corporatize the very process of banking. They want control over that, and the CFPB would be a cop on the beat, making sure they weren't fucking people over when they did that. So they take that out. That's one less regulator they have to deal with in an
Right.
already unregulated
Right.
space of this
Right.
weird sort of digitized,
Right.
appified banking world that they want to
Right.
usher in.
Right.
So you add that to their general philosophy, and it is very, very obvious to anyone with their eyes open that these people mean you harm. And their attitude towards the everyday person is reflected in that tweet, in that email. You have 2 days to tell us what you do here.
Right.
And if you don't
Right.
answer, we're just going to assume you can be fired. I mean, what a pig. What a
Look,
fucking piece of shit.
look, because it's a monster movie, people never think of the Aliens movies as dystopian science fiction, but they do make it pretty clear what the deal is in that future. And I always thought that it was pretty likely. Like Ripley is working for a military division that belongs to a corporation. Basically, in this future, the corporations are governments with their own military, with their own territory. That's where this goes. That's where this goes, where essentially corporations become states.
Please clap.